Hey, do you wish you had a group of people you could discuss and learn about movies with? Welcome to Kaden's Movie Club, which is kind of like a book club, but for movies. And today we're announcing the theme and movie lineup for April. Anytime you watch a movie, it's a combination of a bunch of different artistic elements coming together to form one complete piece. Writing provides the story, cinematography shows us that story, production design brings the world of the story to life, and so on. All the pieces of the puzzle are important, but one of the things that has defined film from the beginning is that it derives its meaning from mashing together a series of images, or in other words, editing. The idea of how editing can create meaning in film was actually popularized by a Soviet filmmaker named Sergei Eisenstein. His whole theory centered around the juxtaposition of images. When you see one image, you can interpret meaning from it like a photograph. But if you bring in a second image, and then connect the two in a sequence, you derive meaning not from the images themselves, but in how they collide together. I know a lot of this might sound obvious, but we have to remember that this is a relatively new concept in history. Painting is tens of thousands of years old. Literature is over 4,000 years old. Photography came around 200 years ago. And film is only about 120 years old. In the last century, we have collectively learned how to derive meaning from the juxtaposition of images. We've literally created a new visual language. When a scene cuts from one thing to another, we know a connection has been drawn between those two things. So in a way, cinema is defined by editing, and without editing, there would be no story. So our theme this month will be, Editing is Story. We're going to take a look at 4 completely different movies and look at how the stories are assembled. We're going to examine how ideas are conveyed, how themes are established, and how stories are told, all through the art of editing. And our lineup will be Chicago, Hoop Dreams, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Citizen Kane. Through a musical, a documentary, an action-adventure story, and a classic, we'll look at how editing is the final stage for any film to really convey meaning to its audience. We'll see how editing has to manipulate things like time and space, or work with other elements like music. We'll see how the different placement of a scene, regardless of how it looks or sounds, can entirely change its meaning. And we'll look at how the decision of when to cut or when not to cut signals different things to us as an audience. And we'll be starting with Chicago, so let me give you a little intro. Chicago was released in 2002, but was based on a stage musical from 1975. The story takes place in 1920 Chicago, a time also known as the Roaring Twenties. After World War I ended in 1918, the following decade was one of general prosperity. People were out to have a good time, so jazz clubs and vaudeville performances were common. We saw the rise of the flapper, which were women that signaled the cultural change by wearing short skirts and having short hair and doing things for their own enjoyment. This was also the time of prohibition, but of course secret bars and clubs were common. So when we enter this time in Chicago, it's a time where jazz performers are celebrities and jazz clubs are where everyone wants to be. The story of Chicago is actually about several women that are on trial for murder. But the real appeal is the way in which the story is told.
Well, I wasn't born yet.
Crummy!
I tell you, there's some things a man just can't take. Boy, what a sap I was!
You double-crosser!
Rather than explore the idea through typical dramatic storytelling, Chicago transforms its plot points into vaudeville performances. So here's some questions to keep in mind while you watch. How does the movie establish the concept without directly telling the audience that the performances are not reality? Is there a sequence where the editing stands out to you in particular? Why? Why do you think the movie constantly interrupts the illusion of the performances to cut back to reality? How does that ultimately contribute to the movie's commentary? I hope you're excited about the movie lineup this month. I'd love to hear what you think about the theme and if you're looking forward to any of the movies in particular. And I'll see you back here on Sunday to talk about Chicago. And if you want to stay in the know about Movie Club, you know where to go.